Boris Johnson will travel to Brussels in the coming days as the UK and EU desperately try to thrash out a Brexit deal at the 11th hour. The Prime Minister and Ursula von der Leyen agreed to meet in person after talks between EU's negotiator Michel Barnier and the UK's Lord David Frost failed to break the deadlock. Negotiations in Brussels between Mr. Barnier and Mr. Frost have been taking place since yesterday morning. Negotiations between the pair in London were paused last Friday after the two negotiators agreed they would be unable to reach an agreement without the intervention of Mr. Johnson and Ms. von der Leyen. The Prime Minister and European Commission President spoke on the phone on Saturday and agreed to restart trade talks before holding another phone call tonight to take stock of progress. A joint statement released after this evening's phone call warned there were remaining significant differences. Mr. Johnson will now travel to Brussels later this week in the hope of agreeing a trade deal. Mr. Frost and Mr. Barnier have been asked to prepare an overview of the remaining sticking points ahead of the in-person negotiations. The statement said, "As agreed on Saturday, we took stock today of the ongoing negotiations. We agreed that the conditions for finalizing an agreement are not there due to the remaining significant differences on three critical issues: level playing field, governance and fisheries. We asked our chief negotiators and their teams to prepare an overview of the remaining differences to be discussed in a physical meeting in Brussels in the coming days." The Prime Minister and Ms. von der Leyen are expected to hold face-to-face talks on Wednesday ahead of a summit of EU leaders on Thursday and Friday. Both sides want to have a deal agreed prior to the summit so it can then be signed off by the EU 27 when they meet. However, a senior government source remained pessimistic about the chances of a deal being achieved. They said, "Talks are in the same position now as they were on Friday. We have made no tangible progress. It's clear this must now continue politically. Whilst we do not consider this process to be closed, things are looking very tricky and there's every chance we are not going to get there." The three remaining issues in negotiations have plagued talks for months with little compromise being offered by either side. Mr. Johnson has consistently said any trade deal must recognize the UK as a sovereign state with control over its own laws and waters. However, the EU wants to ensure Britain keeps similar rules and standards to Brussels to stop it gaining an unfair advantage, as well as continued access to UK waters for fishermen. The Prime Minister has continued to threaten to leave the transition period without a trade deal if he cannot secure a deal that respects his red lines. His spokesman reiterated today, as the Prime Minister has said, "If we have to, we will leave on Australia terms. Australia and the EU do not have a trade agreement and operate under World Trade Organization terms." However, the Prime Minister's spokesman added the UK was willing to negotiate for as long as possible while a deal was still a possibility. He said, "Time is obviously in very short supply and we're in the final stages. But we're prepared to negotiate for as long as we have time available if we think an agreement is still possible." Mr. Barnier put a deadline on negotiations in a meeting with EU diplomats earlier today, telling those present a deal must be agreed by the end of Wednesday. Talks have already gone on way past the deadline, with just weeks left for any possible deal to be agreed before being ratified by MPs in Westminster and MEPs in Brussels before the transition period ends on the 31st of December.